Hey there, Tony with Culinary Seasons. And today we're at Port Orford Sustainable Seafood interviewing Aaron and Kean. They also have the galley right behind me here. It is a kitchen they have right in there, right out front of their processing. You can get fresh or frozen product from them. The fish is great. We had a black cod bowl from them today at the galley. It was a miso and chili oil glaze, cooked right in front of you. Asian slaw with it as well. Very delicious. And they also have some different things different days of the week depending on what their availability is. So I really recommend it if you're in Port Orford, and come down and see them. So at Port Orford Sustainable Seafood in Port Orford, Oregon, here on the coast. And so I want to thank Aaron for agreeing to do the interview with me. And
welcome.
Came in contact with Aaron through Positively Groundfish out of California, but they represent up and down the West Coast.
They're an industry group, and they're awesome.
Yeah. They are do a lot of great things. And so maybe you can give me a little history on Port Orford Sustainable Seafood, where it originated from.
Okay. Back around the year 2000, there was a groundfish crisis, and there were a couple species of rockfish, being yellow eye rockfish and canary rockfish, that were deemed as overfished. Well, when that happened, first of all, the yellow eyes, they lived to be 150 years old in some cases. So rebuilding them is not something you do overnight. But they started on what is called the RCA. It's the Rockfish Conservation Area. And it goes from 30 fathoms out to 100 fathoms. And there's no bottom contact there. Unless you're crabbing, a crab pot can hit bottom, but no hook and line. Okay. Salmon people can traverse through and troll in that when there's an open season. But to eliminate the risk of overfishing on those species, there was a moratorium put on it, and that went into place. Then the next thing that started steaming our way was the need for marine reserves. And California had gone well before us, and I know that British Columbia had already engaged. I think there may have been some in Washington. It was coming to Oregon. And we are sitting here with Port Orford Reef, Cape Blanco. The habitat here is incredible. And we knew that we'd be in the bullseye of any marine reserve move. So a lot of the conservation groups and nonprofits, that were trying to get that done as their agenda, we decided that we'd just try and flip it over. Rather than be victims, we'd engage and do our best to understand if and why it might be a good idea, and then help locate it. So it wouldn't just be an arbitrary closure over a huge area, right? We figured we could kind of choke it down and get the kind of habitat varieties that they wanted. So we formed a nonprofit, Port Orford Ocean Resource Team. That was back in 2002, and we just dissolved 20 years later. So we did that so we could stand together as a group of fishermen. We had executive director was Lisa Cobb. She was a fisherman's wife. And then we had a 5-fisherman board of directors. And we tackled the issue. We had meetings with all the boat owners and crew here, and we got out big maps and started drawing lines of where everybody thought would be the best place. And, of course, we're looking at, minimizing that footprint, but also meeting all the criteria. And we decided that Redfish Rocks, which is just a couple miles south of here, between here and Mount Humbug, fit the bill. As it turns out, there's a lot of big haystacks, pinnacles in this marine reserve. And we're told by the staff at ODFW that we have more vertical underwater habitat and high relief habitat in our smaller marine reserve than all the other marine reserves on the Oregon coast put together.
It's pretty amazing.
There's a lot of creatures that only attach themselves on vertical water.
Sure.
So to have all those unique ecosystems all in this 2.6 square miles.
And I believe I read that area is also a breeding ground for a lot of the groundfish, correct?
It is. Well, it was called Redfish Rocks for a reason.
Okay.
And it just so happens that canary rockfish and yellow eye rockfish are red. Potentially a breeding area, a incubation area for smaller fish to get bigger, larvae to grow up and settle.
Yeah.
We also put in, I think it's like 7 square miles or something, a marine protected area that allows for you to traverse across the top of it, fishing salmon and crabbing, but no bottom contact with hook and line.
No line fish.
Yeah, and it goes out to the territorial sea, which is the 3-mile economic line that Oregon State,
can enforce, basically.
Yeah, so that was 10 years ago that we did that, and it was a pretty bizarre thing for fishermen to take the bull by the horns and engage, and we educated ourselves the best we could and made the wisest decision we could, and people kind of just stood back and let us do it. Now, industry wasn't too fond of it. I mean, for the most part, everybody was saying, we don't talk about that here. We don't even say the word marine reserve, because we educated ourselves and we understand that it's like having a savings account. We think that having a marine reserve that's functioning at its pristine ability is a stronghold in an environment that may be subject to different threats. Again, having the high relief habitat and having a marine reserve in a place that's unspoiled like that just accentuates rebuilding when there is a ebb and flow of, because everything's cyclical.
Yeah.
When we walled off marine reserve, we figured that was probably about 20% of our fishable habitat for our nearshore fishery. So we figured that we needed to make up for that somehow. And that's how we ended up starting Port Orford Sustainable Seafood. And we also said, too, and now that we have this marine reserve, let's use it for what it is. It's a tourism thing. Dave Lacey, who was bigwig with Surfrider, he and a local guy, a good guy, he started South Coast Tours, and now he does kayak tours. He has a little motorboat that he does tours. They go down to the marine reserve, and he's got the elevator speak down pat, I'm sure,
Yeah.
And we also charter local boats, or ODFW does, to go down and do the stock assessments. We still go back into the marine reserve under a strict guideline so they can check stocks to see if there's actually any growth. And then they also have a replica site, which is down by Humbug Mountain just a few miles away, that's similar habitat, so we can see how that's responding to fishing pressure. And we are finding that there's measurable increases in all classes of fish. And we've done some acoustic tagging of fish, so we see where they move and what they're... Because when we first started the Marine Reserve, we wanted to make it big enough to have... So there's some of these colored fish in the nearshore, like quillback rockfish, China rockfish, cabezon, which is not a rockfish, they're a sculpin, but anyway, they have very, very small home ranges. Yeah. I mean, when there's a big swell event during a winter storm, they may move offshore a little bit, but then they come right back to their hidey hole. And we didn't really, we were told that, but now that we've actually tagged them and seen how they act, we had a perimeter of buoys that they would ping. So if they left and came back, we'd know which one it was and where they went for how long.
That's
kind of intrusive.
Yeah, kind of, but I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, we also, with that acoustic array that we had set up, we got green sturgeon that were tagged down in the Klamath River. We got great whites that were tagged out on the Farallones.
Wow. That
came through and pinged. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
So yeah, these are things we'd have never known, It was just new discoveries for the ranging of all these different things. So anyway, then Port Orford Sustainable Seafood was originally, there was 3 fishermen, myself, another board member of mine, and then Lisa's husband. We all put in $1,500 a piece to get our certification and a legal set of scales, and we were literally working out of 150-quart igloo ice chests and doing farmers markets over in the Rogue Valley to begin with. And then we got invited to go to this first annual CSF meeting, which is Community Sport and Fishery meeting, and which was started on the East Coast by a couple colleagues of ours. And we got started, and we focus on Western Oregon, although we are moving into Bend. Good seafood isn't cheap, but and cheap seafood isn't good. If it's cheap, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Maybe it was harvested and froze and sent to China to be processed and then sent back, and who knows whether it was thawed and frozen. This is an understandable, storied supply chain, and we have complete control over it. And there's something to be said for that. Every package of fish we have, and that's me, Aaron Longton on the GoldenEye. You know what I mean? So the boat that caught it and the captain of that boat is on each
label.
And we're real people, and we want to form relationships with our customers.
So how long have you been on the coast?
I've been commercial fishing for 21 years.
Wow.
And I've lived here for 20 years. We do have big windows of bad weather.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at the forecast and say, well, I'm not going to be fishing for the next 10 days. And sometimes that happens with north winds in the summer, and sometimes it's storm track in the winter. But anyway, so you've got time off, so you need a new project, like the selling seafood, because that never ends. First, we figured out what the best standard is, and that's we ice the fish down overnight, let it firm up, cut it the next day as ASAP as it comes in, and then we portion it up and freeze it to -30. Once we pull it out of the blast freezer, we hold it at -10, and that's when it goes into our inventory. And then once it goes into our inventory, we post it on our online store, which we call the Dock, and our 400 plus CSF members in Western Oregon and Bend shop there, and then we deliver monthly to their communities. And we have community partners where there's either we have access to freezer space for their professional, or else we have a chest freezer there. Yeah. So the main thing is we culminate relationships with other foodies and people who get the value of what we're doing, and then we share our people that come there to pick up seafood, shop there. But, there's a little mutual beneficial markets. Yeah. We have a direct person-to-person market through our CSF, and then we sell to true retail, which I consider to be like Port Orford Food Co-op here, stores that actually receive it, mark it up, and sell it again. And then we have restaurant accounts. Fewer of those than we used to. We had a lot more when we started out.
Did COVID affect that somewhat?
It did. Yeah. It did. Of course, we focused on, while the restaurant thing kind of fell away at that time, the CSF kind of boomed. Everybody started to really want to know where their food came from. It worked out good, and so we tried to change our focus.
There's about 40 boats that dock at Port Orford. Port Orford Sustainable Seafood has bought fish from all of them at one time or another. As Aaron said, Port Orford fishermen took the bulls by the horn and got together to mitigate any loss they were going to have by establishing marine reserve. Before establishing Port Orford Sustainable Seafood, most all of the catch that was brought to port was sold into the supply chain to the corporate buyers, never having a name attached to it and not making it as familiar and traceable as Port Orford Sustainable Seafood does. Tell me about the fish that you catch. What seasonality do you guys run across? Well, are there certain catches you go after?
One thing that's unique about Port Orford is I already boasted about all our super good high relief habitat, the rock structure, and all the different types of habitat and ecosystems that depend on that. We also are very close to the shelf and the abyss, which means we can go black cod fishing out of here and only be 2 hours out there to the black cod grounds, where if you out of Newport it takes 12 hours.
Wow.
To before it, so it becomes not economically feasible to go for daily trip limits and stuff. The benefit we have here is we're closer to the deeps. So we fish groundfish all the time, year round, weather permitting, and that's sable fish, black cod, for the most part. That's our target fish, and then we catch shelf rockfish. As a bycatch, we catch like petrale sole, long-nosed skate, octopus once in a while. Then we also have a nearshore fishery, which is primarily a live fishery, where we keep the fish alive and sell them for the Asian markets down in the California for the most part. Yeah. Some of them go up to Portland too, but where there's Asian communities that have demand for live fish. And a lot of them are very ornate and pretty, like China rockfish are got a big yellow stripe down the side. They're really pretty. Well, we have 74 different species of rockfish that inhabit these waters here.
Yeah.
Some of them are shelf, slope, and then near shore. Okay. And the near shore fishery also cabezon, which I think I mentioned earlier, which is the alpha sculpin. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we troll for pelagic species, be it salmon or albacore tuna first. Halibut is in that mix. We have a halibut opener in the summer. It's managed internationally through the International Halibut Commission.
Fishermen go out. When you go out, how far out are you guys going? Are you going out to the edge of the shelf?
Tuna fishing, tuna fishing will go up to 100, 150 miles away from port. Okay. Sometimes that's diagonal, like we'll go up off of Newport or down off of, Crescent City. Sure. Wherever we got to go to find the schools of tuna. But for the most part, we sleep in our beds here. We're day boats. Okay. So that means our fish are fresher than most too, because those big boats that are out there fishing around the clock, sure, they have freezers and stuff on board, but a lot of times they're on 5-day trips, 30-day trips. Yeah. It's a good story.
Like Aaron said, Port Orford Sustainable Seafood origin is a good story. Let's get down to the processing room and the galley and meet Kean, see some fish, and learn more about Port Orford Sustainable Seafood CSF program.
My name's Kean Fleming, and I'm a co-owner and employee here at Port Orford Sustainable Seafood. Okay. This is our processing place, and it's small but effective. There's a blast freezer on the right, refrigerator on the left. Brian is currently in kind of the #1 fish cutting position here, which is where he spends a lot of time cutting some ling cod right now. Nice. And we've got a hodgepodge of different near shore and deep water fish in the tote right now. Like right here, we've got a cabezon. This here is a black cod or sable fish, which are in deep water. This looks like a focaccia right here. Yep. Right, like there are 3 main realms for rockfish. There's nearshore rockfish, slope rockfish, and shelf rockfish. All done.
So you guys process everything in here. Boats come in how often?
Yeah, so our boats are small, and which is a limitation and also a claim to sustainability here in Port Orford. Is all the boats go in and out of the hook down there, which has a 25-ton limit. The fact that they're small also means they don't go fishing when the weather is real bad. Like right now, it's very windy. Probably very few people are fishing.
Okay. And it's just day boats. They just go out and come back. And
that's right.
No multiple days.
No. So on some tuna trips, they might stay out for a couple of days, or for a halibut derby, they might go pretty far north and end up staying out for a couple of days. But otherwise, yes, they go out, they come back to their families, they land their fish that same day, and then we cut it promptly thereafter.
That's awesome. Yeah, you guys flash freeze it, and once a month deliver it to the CSF customers.
That's right. So we have a delivery route that goes up and down I-5. We've got 22 sites altogether now, from Portland to Ashland, and in the Applegate Valley. The way our CSF works is you put in an initial amount starting at $200, and then that becomes your starting balance from which you draw down from. So as you place orders, we just deduct from your balance. You can always add more money in, and you order through like an online storefront that has images of ling cod, albacore, rockfish, halibut, everything that we catch here. And you add that to your cart or your basket, and we see those orders and fulfill them.
Cool. Big thank you to Aaron Longton and Kean Fleming for doing the Exploring the Source interview with Culinary Season. Check out recipes cooked with Port Orford Sustainable Seafood fish at culinaryseasons.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.